Learn from the world's best all in one place with Masterclass, the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 of the world's best. Masterclass always has great offers during the holidays, sometimes up to as much as 50% off. Head over to masterclass.com/Spotify for the current offer. That's up to 50% off at masterclass.com/Spotify.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Cats and Cosby on 77 WABC. Breaking news, WABC.
And we are back here on Cats and Cosby. Well, Luigi Mangione, the suspect accused of killing the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, waived extradition. He was flown in. It was like a scene out of a movie with so much security from Altoona, Pennsylvania. He is now in New York facing federal charges. And joining us to talk about this and other huge legal stuff today is the great former federal prosecutor, Doug Burns. Doug, great to have you here. Your reaction to the fact that now the feds are also, there's 4 federal charges now against Luigi. There were 11 New York State charges. Your thoughts?
Yep. Well, I knew he was going to waive extradition because extradition's a little misunderstood. People think it has to do with, guilt or innocence. No, it's just identity. Is this the person wanted? So he was smart. He listened to his lawyer's advice and he waived it. Very unusual to see the federal government bring a charge when the state has indicted for murder. You hardly ever see that, but it's of no great significance. One of the cases, obviously, by definition, has to go first. And I think your audience will find it interesting that it's almost always the state, because if there's an acquittal in state court, hypothetically, the feds can recharge. That's the Rodney King fact pattern. If it's in reverse and the person's acquitted in federal court, it's double jeopardy, and they cannot be charged in state court. So usually the state goes first. Look, it's a murder case, cold-blooded murder. It's really second degree under New York state law because first degree is exceptional circumstances. Police officer, corrections officer as the victim. To charge terrorism was ill-advised, but that's Bragg. What are you going to do?
So let me getting to Bragg. I think as soon as I heard the federal, I thought they're doing it because it's Bragg maybe on the New York charge. I hate to say it. I mean, this was obviously a horrible high-profile case, Doug Burns, but you can't bank on how the Bragg situation will go. And also, New York State has not had death penalty since 2004. So you could put death penalty on the table with the feds. Timothy McVeigh got the death penalty.
Yeah, no, you're making 2 good points. One is a federal prosecution is an insurance policy, as I just explained. In other words, if something goes wrong, the case is mishandled in state court, then the federal government can recharge. On the death penalty, open question. I can't really predict with any type of certainty whether or not they will seek it. We'll see. But again, for Bragg to have charged terrorism was ill-advised. The federal government hasn't charged him with terrorism. It's interesting because there's a section 924C, we call it in the vernacular, of Title 18, and if you use a silencer, it's a 30-year mandatory minimum. They charged him with that. So the charges are astronomical in terms of the prison exposure in both cases.
You know what's wild? The security around Luigi today. We were all watching it. I mean, I felt like I was watching almost a scene out of Mission Impossible because they put him on a helicopter because sadly there have been these people who've been glorifying him, and there were like people waiting every step of the way to see him. And when he got into New York, there were people waiting there, but the security was massive. Isn't it? It's unbelievable, isn't it, Doug? Just to see, and you could see Eric Adams and and obviously other folks, Jessica Tisch and others were going to great pains, and I applaud them for saying, do not herald this guy.
No, I agree 100%. And the point is, when you put aside the legal technicalities and the X's and O's, first degree, second degree, symbolically, They're absolutely throwing the book at this guy. The federal one, back to a little bit of the X's and O's, is a complaint, not an indictment. So we'll see what they do there. That's a preliminary charge. They didn't indict him, but I expect that they probably will. And again, they can hold off until the state case. But basically, to your core point, what's going on, and I think it's a good thing, is a stern overall global message. You can't waltz into New York City, one of the greatest cities in the world, and just gun somebody down in cold blood. And we are throwing everything in the kitchen sink at you.
Yeah, absolutely. Governor Patterson.
Doug, in some of the writings that this Mangione, had that have been released, he actually assumes that he is going to be successful because he then says that it's trivial, that the real reason he's doing it is to ignite a reaction to how healthcare companies and other similar types of companies operate. So if this comes back at trial, isn't that almost effective as a guilty plea?
Yeah, I mean, again, Governor, the case, with the caveat that I never prejudge a case, and I know you don't either, and we wait and see. He's innocent right now as we're speaking, but the point is, with the accumulation of the type of evidence you're talking about, which is incredible amounts of surveillance video and photographs, obviously reports about fingerprint match, ballistics match, it's going to be a very, very hard case to defend. And then to the manifesto, your point, yeah, absolutely. I think there will be stuff in there that will be damaging to him.
And,
it's going to be hard to defend this one.
And Doug Burns, before we let you go, the other big news, Fani Willis, my tease, which the Gov love, Fani Willis got the boot. Today, a state appeals court said she's disqualified and her team from the case. So your thoughts on that?
Very, very pleased to see that. I looked at the opinion. I mean, the court below, real quick, found that there was an appearance of impropriety, but the remedy was Solomonic. If one of the two leaves, the other can stay. On appeal, they simply agreed with the trial court. There's an appearance of impropriety, but we disagree on the remedy. She has to go. She gets the axe, I'm going to call it.
Yeah. What did you think about that, Ed? First of all, it's a foregone. I thought it's a foregone conclusion that they would actually boot Fani Willis, but it took a while. And the question is the case done yet? You're an attorney, Ed Cox. What do you think?
The case, yes, the case is done. Not technically, but it's really finished. That leaves only one, the one here in New York, for which there's still a sentencing, and I think that Judge Mershon does not want that decision to be appealed, and he's going to try and prevent that anyway because he'd be very embarrassed on appeal on that one. So basically, all four of the cases are over.
Do you agree, Judge Weinberg? It's done, that case?
You're talking about the Manhattan case?
Well, the Fani Willis.
Oh, the Fani Willis case is done because, as Ed Cox said before we went on air, you're going to have the governor of the state, who's a Republican governor, who's going to appoint a special counsel or special assistant attorney general on the case, and they're not going to go forward with that. So it was a ridiculous case anyway. It was all made up. On the Mershon thing, and I'm interested in Doug's opinion, I think that's going to be hanging over Trump for 4 years, that sentencing. I don't see him getting any relief on that because until he's sentenced, you don't have the appeal, Doug. Am I right?
No, Ed makes the key point, and so do you, Judge, which is until he's sentenced, he's not convicted, so that goes to the whole nonsensical political soundbites. So the convicted felon. He's not convicted of anything.
Exactly.
And that's not a political point. It's a law point. But to Ed's point, if he's sentenced, then he gets reviewed on appeal. Right. That's why I thought he was going to dismiss it and blame the Supreme Court. But
exactly.
I was wrong.
That's what I thought, too.
Well, he's not. Honestly, I hate to speak poorly of a former colleague, but he wasn't smart enough to do that.
Yeah, that would have been the logical thing.
That was the smart money. Blame it on the Supreme Court. What do you want from me?
Absolutely. Perfect.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wow. Well, Doug, thank you very, very much. So many cases. We love having you here. And if we don't talk to you, Doug, Merry Christmas.